The hospital cafeteria was nearly empty that Tuesday evening. Most visitors had already left for the day, and the staff were between shifts. Daniel sat alone at a corner table, staring at a cup of coffee that had gone cold an hour ago. He wasn't really seeing it anyway. His mind was somewhere else entirely, replaying the conversation he'd just had with his mother's doctor. The words kept echoing in his head even though he'd been trying not to think about them. At 42 years old, Daniel had built something most people only dream about. His tech company was worth billions. He had homes in 3 different cities, a garage full of expensive cars he rarely drove, and enough money to last several lifetimes. But sitting in that hospital cafeteria, none of it seemed to matter. His mother was dying, and all his success couldn't change that simple, terrible fact. He'd spent the last hour at her bedside, watching her sleep. The machines beeped steadily, marking time in a way that felt both too fast and too slow. She looked so small in that hospital bed, so different from the strong woman who'd raised him alone after his father left. Daniel had promised himself he wouldn't cry in front of her, but the moment she'd squeezed his hand and told him she was proud of him, his eyes had burned with tears he couldn't quite hold back. Now he sat in the cafeteria because he couldn't go home yet. The penthouse apartment waiting for him felt more like a museum than a home anyway. Clean, expensive, and completely empty except for him. His ex-wife had taken everything that mattered when she left 3 years ago. Not the furniture or the art, she could have those. She'd taken the warmth, the laughter, the feeling that someone was waiting for him at the end of a long day, and honestly, Daniel couldn't blame her. He'd chosen work over her so many times that she'd finally stopped asking him to choose. The cafeteria smelled like disinfectant mixed with old coffee and something that might have been soup earlier in the day. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting everything in a harsh, unflattering glow. A janitor pushed a mop across the far end of the room, and somewhere in the distance, an announcement crackled over the intercom. Daniel barely noticed any of it. That's when he heard the voice. Small, a little uncertain, but somehow still cheerful. "Can I sit here?" Daniel looked up, startled out of his thoughts. Standing next to his table was a little girl, maybe 7 or 8 years old. She wore pink pajamas with little stars on them, and fuzzy slippers shaped like bunnies. An IV pole stood next to her, the tube running up to her thin arm. But what caught Daniel's attention most was the bright yellow knitted cap on her head, and the way her brown eyes looked at him with genuine curiosity rather than pity or expectation. For a moment, Daniel wanted to say no. He wasn't good with kids. He never had been. Even before his ex-wife left, they'd agreed not to have children. He'd told himself it was because he was too busy, too focused on building his company. But the truth was simpler and harder to admit. He was scared. Scared of being responsible for someone else. Scared of loving something he might lose. But something about the way the little girl stood there, patient and hopeful, made him nod instead. "Sure," he said quietly. The girl smiled and carefully sat down across from him, arranging her IV pole so it wouldn't get in the way. She had a worn notebook tucked under her arm and a small box of colored pencils that rattled when she set it on the table. "Thanks," she said, opening her notebook. "The other tables are too wobbly. This one's the best." Daniel watched as she began to draw, her small hands moving the colored pencils across the page with careful concentration. She hummed a little tune under her breath, something he didn't recognize. For several minutes, neither of them spoke. The silence should have been awkward, but somehow it wasn't. "What are you drawing?" Daniel finally asked, surprising himself. The girl looked up, her face lighting up. "The ocean. I've never seen it in real life, but I watch videos about it all the time. Did you know there are fish that can light up in the dark? They're called bioluminescent. I learned that word from a documentary." She said the big word carefully, proud that she knew it. Daniel found himself almost smiling for the first time that day. "That's a pretty impressive word," he said. "I like learning new words," the girl explained, going back to her drawing. She was coloring something blue, pressing hard with the pencil to make it darker. "My mom says I'm going to be a marine biologist when I grow up. That means I'll study ocean animals." "Sounds like a good plan," Daniel said. The girl nodded seriously. "I have lots of plans. I want to see dolphins and whales and sea turtles. I want to learn to surf. And I want to find a really perfect seashell, the kind that sounds like the ocean when you hold it to your ear." There was something about the way she talked about the future, so certain and hopeful that made Daniel's chest feel tight. He glanced at the IV pole. at the way her pajamas hung a little loose on her small frame, at the knitted cap covering what he suspected was a bald head. "Why are you here?" he asked gently. "In the hospital, I mean." The girl shrugged, still coloring. "I'm sick, but I'm going to get better. The doctors are really smart, and my mom says I'm strong like a superhero. She calls me her little warrior. Your mom sounds nice." "She's the best," the girl said, her voice full of warmth. "She works really hard so we can have a good life. Sometimes she's tired, but she always reads me stories before bed, even when we're here." Daniel felt something shift inside him, something he couldn't quite name. Here was this child, sick enough to be in the hospital, dragging an IV pole around, and she was drawing pictures of the ocean and talking about her dreams like they were guaranteed to come true. Meanwhile, he had everything and felt like he had nothing. "Can I see your drawing?" he asked. The girl turned the notebook around. The ocean she'd drawn was more feeling than accuracy, all swirling blues and greens with bright fish scattered throughout. In the corner, she'd drawn a little girl with a yellow hat standing on a beach, her arms stretched wide like she was embracing the whole sea. "That's beautiful," Daniel said, and meant it. The girl beamed. "You can have it if you want. I draw a lot of ocean pictures." "I couldn't take that," Daniel protested. "Sure you can. You look like you need something happy to look at." She carefully tore the page from her notebook and slid it across the table. "See? Now you have your own piece of the ocean." Daniel picked up the drawing, feeling the slight texture of the colored pencil on the paper. When was the last time someone had given him something just to be nice? Not to impress him, not to get something from him just because they thought it might make him happy? "Thank you," he said softly. The girl started packing up her colored pencils. "I should probably go back to my room. My mom will worry if I'm gone too long. But this was nice." "You're a good listener." She stood up, carefully taking hold of her IV pole. Then she paused and looked at Daniel with those thoughtful brown eyes. "You looked really sad when I came over," she said. "Are you okay?" Daniel opened his mouth, ready to give the automatic response he always gave. "I'm fine. Everything's fine." But something about this little girl's honest concern made him answer truthfully instead. "My mom is very sick," he said. "I'm worried about her." The girl nodded solemnly. "That's really hard. I'm sorry." She reached out and patted his hand, a gesture that should have seemed childish but instead felt deeply kind. "I hope she feels better soon. And I hope you feel better too." Then she smiled at him one more time and walked away, her bunny slippers shuffling across the cafeteria floor, the wheels of her IV pole squeaking slightly. Daniel sat there for a long time after she left, holding the drawing in his hands. Something had happened in those few minutes, something he couldn't quite explain. For just a moment, the weight he'd been carrying felt a little lighter. A sick child had given him a gift, not of money or success, but of simple human connection. And for the first time in longer than he could remember, Daniel didn't feel quite so alone. He carefully folded the drawing and put it in his jacket pocket, right over his heart. Then he stood up, threw away his cold coffee, and headed back upstairs to sit with his mother a while longer. Tomorrow would bring whatever it would bring. But tonight he'd carry with him the memory of a little girl in bunny slippers who'd asked if she could sit with him, and in doing so, had reminded him that kindness still existed in the world. 3 days passed before Daniel saw the little girl again. In that time, his mother had taken a turn for the worse, then stabilized, then gotten worse again. The doctor spoke in careful tones about comfort and dignity, words that Daniel understood but didn't want to accept. He found himself spending more and more time at the hospital, leaving his office in the hands of his second-in-command, and ignoring the stack of urgent emails growing in his inbox. None of it seemed important anymore. It was Thursday afternoon, when he spotted her in the hallway. She was walking slowly, one hand on her IV pole, the other holding what looked like a small stuffed dolphin. Her yellow knitted cap had been replaced with a blue one today, and she looked even thinner than she had 3 days ago. But when she saw Daniel, her face broke into a huge smile. "Hi, you're the man from the cafeteria." Daniel felt something warm spread through his chest. "Hi, how are you feeling?" The girl made a so-so gesture with her hand. "Some days are better than others. Today's an okay day. I got to okay around a little bit, and the nurses let me watch cartoons this morning." "That sounds nice," Daniel said. And then, because he genuinely wanted to know, he asked, "What's your name?" "I realized I never asked," the girl giggled. "That's funny. We had a whole conversation and we didn't even introduce ourselves. I'm Lily. I'm Daniel. That's a good name, Lily said seriously. My grandpa was named Daniel. He told the best stories. They stood there in the hallway for a moment and Daniel felt something he hadn't expected. He didn't want the conversation to end. Are you heading back to your room? I was going to the cafeteria, actually, Lily said. It's not dinner time yet, but they have apple juice and it's really good here. Better than the regular juice boxes. Mind if I walk with you? Lily's smile got even bigger. I'd like that. They made their way slowly down the corridor, Lily's IV pole clicking with each step. She chatted about her day, about the nurse who had promised to bring her a new coloring book, about the therapy dog that visited on Tuesdays. Daniel found himself relaxing in a way he rarely did, even around adults he'd known for years. When they reached the cafeteria, it was nearly empty again. They sat at the same table as before, and Daniel got Lily her apple juice while getting himself another coffee. This one he actually planned to drink. How's your mom? Lily asked once he sat down. Your mom who's sick? Daniel was surprised she remembered. She's hanging in there. It's hard, but she's tough. My mom's tough too, Lily said. She works at 2 different places. During the day, she's at a restaurant, and 3 nights a week she cleans offices. She gets really tired, but she never complains. Just the 2 of you? Daniel asked gently. Lily nodded, taking a sip of her juice. My dad left when I got sick. Mom doesn't like to talk about it, but I heard her on the phone once. She was crying and telling her friend that he couldn't handle it. She paused, swinging her legs under the table. I think maybe he was scared. Some people get scared when things get hard. The simple wisdom in her words hit Daniel harder than any business insight he'd ever heard. Here was a child, dealing with more than most adults would face in a lifetime, and she had more understanding and forgiveness than he'd managed to scrape together in 42 years. That must be hard, Daniel said. Not having your dad around, Lily shrugged. Sometimes. But Mom says we're doing okay, just us 2. And the doctors and nurses are really nice. Dr. Patterson always does silly voices when he checks on me, and Nurse Kelly brings me extra pudding cups. She grinned. Plus I made a new friend, you. Daniel felt his throat tighten. I'm glad we're friends. Over the next 2 weeks, their meetings became routine. Daniel would visit his mother, spend time reading to her or just sitting by her bedside, and then he'd find Lily. Sometimes she'd be in the cafeteria. Sometimes she'd be in the common area on the pediatric floor where kids could play games and watch movies. Sometimes she'd be in her room, and her mother would smile gratefully when Daniel knocked, clearly appreciating that her daughter had someone else to talk to while she ran down to grab a quick meal or handle paperwork. Lily's mother, Rosa, was a small woman with kind eyes and hands that showed the hard work she did every day. The first time Daniel properly met her, she'd tried to thank him for spending time with Lily, her voice cracking with emotion. You don't have to thank me, Daniel had said. Lily's great company. She's helping me more than I'm helping her. Rosa had looked at him with understanding, like she knew exactly what he meant. Daniel started bringing things for Lily, art supplies since she was always drawing, books about the ocean which she devoured, a small tablet loaded with documentaries about marine life. He told himself he was just being nice, just passing time. But the truth was, Lily had become the brightest part of his days. When everything else felt dark and uncertain, she was light and hope. He learned that she was 8 years old, that her favorite color was blue because it reminded her of the ocean, that she wanted a pet turtle someday, that she could name every planet in order, and had memorized the periodic table for fun. He learned that she'd been sick for almost 2 years, that she'd missed most of 2nd and 3rd grade, that she did her schoolwork with a tutor who came to the hospital twice a week. In return, Daniel found himself sharing things he never talked about. He told her about his company, explaining in simple terms what his work involved. He talked about his mother, about growing up with just the 2 of them, about how hard she'd worked to give him opportunities. He even mentioned his divorce, though he kept it brief. Do you miss being married? Lily asked one day. They were in the common area and she was drawing while he worked on his laptop. Daniel thought about it. I miss having someone to come home to, but my wife and I weren't right for each other. I worked too much. I wasn't very good at making her feel important. Why did you work so much? It was a child's question, simple and direct. Daniel closed his laptop. I thought if I built something big enough, successful enough, I'd be happy. I'd be enough. And are you happy? Daniel looked at this little girl with her blue knitted cap and her wise eyes. "I'm getting there," he said quietly. His mother passed away on a Tuesday morning. Daniel had been there holding her hand. She'd opened her eyes one last time, smiled at him, whispered that she loved him, and then she was gone. Peaceful, quiet, but final in a way that made Daniel feel like the ground had disappeared beneath his feet. He went through the motions of the next few days. Funeral arrangements, calls to relatives, paperwork and decisions and condolences from people who barely knew his mother. His business partner wanted him to take time off, but Daniel didn't know what he'd do with time off. Go back to his empty apartment and stare at the walls. On Thursday, he found himself back at the hospital. It was the only place that felt familiar anymore. He wasn't visiting anyone now. He was just there. He was sitting in the cafeteria in what had become his spot when Lily found him. She took one look at his face and climbed into the chair next to him, instead of across from him. She didn't say anything. She just sat there close, her small presence somehow enormously comforting. "My mom died," Daniel said finally. "I know," Lily said softly. "Nurse Kelly told me. I'm really, really sorry." Daniel nodded, not trusting himself to speak. "Is she hurting anymore?" Lily asked. "No, she's not hurting anymore." "Then that's good, right?" Lily said. "I mean, it's sad for you because you miss her. But she's not scared or in pain now. That's what my mom tells me when I'm scared, that whatever happens, I won't hurt anymore. And that's something." Daniel looked down at this 8-year-old girl who was facing her own mortality with more courage than he'd ever managed. And something inside him cracked open. Tears came, the kind he'd been holding back for days. And Lily just sat there next to him, occasionally patting his arm, not trying to make it better or tell him it would be okay. Just being there. When he finally stopped crying, Lily handed him a napkin from the dispenser on the table. "My mom says crying helps get the sad out," she said. "Like draining water from a bucket so it doesn't overflow." Daniel managed a small smile. "Your mom is very wise." "I know," Lily said, and then, "Do you want to see what I've been drawing? It might help." She pulled out her notebook and showed him pages and pages of ocean scenes. Dolphins jumping through waves, underwater coral reefs full of colorful fish, sea turtles swimming in crystal blue water, and in the corner of every single picture, a little girl in a yellow or blue hat, always smiling, always reaching toward the water. "These are beautiful," Daniel said, his voice rough. "I draw them when I'm sad or scared," Lily explained. "I imagine I'm there in the ocean and nothing hurts and everything is beautiful. It makes me feel better." She looked up at him. "Do you have something that makes you feel better?" Daniel thought about his empty apartment, his successful company that felt meaningless, his expensive cars and homes. "Not really," he admitted. Lily considered this. "Maybe you need to find something. Everyone needs something that makes them feel better." Over the next few days, Daniel kept coming back. Not just for Lily, though seeing her was always the highlight. He found himself volunteering in the pediatric wing, reading to kids, helping with art projects, just being present. The staff started to recognize him, greeting him by name, and slowly something started to change. The heavy weight of his grief was still there, but it wasn't the only thing anymore. There was also Lily's laugh when he told her a terrible joke. The smile from a nurse when he helped clean up after craft time. The quiet satisfaction of making a scared kid feel a little less alone. One evening, Lily was having a rough day. She'd had a procedure that morning and was exhausted and uncomfortable. Daniel sat by her bed, reading to her from one of the ocean books he'd brought. Rosa was there too, sitting on the other side, holding Lily's hand. "Daniel," Lily said sleepily. "Yeah? Why are you so nice to me?" Daniel closed the book, thinking about how to answer. "Because you were nice to me first. You asked if you could sit with me when I really needed someone to sit with, and you gave me a picture of the ocean when I felt like I was drowning. You reminded me that good things still exist," Lily smiled, her eyes already closing. "That's what friends do." "Yeah," Daniel said softly. "That's what friends do." As he watched her fall asleep, Daniel made a quiet promise to himself. Whatever happened, whatever Lily was facing, he was going to be there. This little girl had given him something precious without even realizing it. She'd given him a reason to care again, a reason to feel again, a reason to believe that maybe, just maybe, he could be the kind of person who made a difference in someone's life. He didn't know it yet, but that promise was about to be tested in ways he couldn't imagine. Daniel had been sitting in the hospital's small chapel, when he overheard the conversation. He wasn't religious, hadn't been in years, but there was something peaceful about the quiet space. He'd come there to think, to try to make sense of the strange new direction his life had taken. The chapel was mostly empty that afternoon. Just him in the back row and two women talking in hushed voices near the front. He wasn't trying to listen. He'd even put in his earbuds, though no music was playing. But one of the voices rose slightly, cracking with emotion, and despite himself, Daniel recognized it. Rosa, Lily's mother. "I don't know what to do anymore, Father," Rosa was saying. She was talking to the hospital chaplain, a kind-faced older man Daniel had seen around. "The doctors say there's a treatment option, but it's experimental. Insurance won't cover it. They say it costs $500,000. Daniel felt his whole body go still. He should leave, give them privacy. But his feet wouldn't move. "How much time does she have without it?" the chaplain asked gently. Rosa's voice broke. "Maybe 3 months. Maybe 6 if we're lucky. But with this treatment, they think she could have a real chance." "A good chance. Dr. Patterson showed me the studies. Kids like Lily, with her specific type, they're responding really well. 70% survival rate. 70%, she was crying now. But I can't give her that chance because I don't have the money. I've been working every hour I can. I've asked everyone I know. I started one of those fundraising pages online, but we've only raised $4,000. 4,000 out of 500,000. Have you talked to the financial aid office? Sometimes they can work out payment plans. They tried. I don't qualify for most of their programs because I make just slightly too much. Can you believe that? I work 2 jobs, barely sleep. And I make too much money to get help, but not nearly enough to pay for what my daughter needs." Rosa's voice was bitter now, desperate. "I've thought about everything. Taking out loans, but no bank will give me that kind of money. Selling everything I own, but I don't own anything worth selling. I've even thought about just running away with her, taking her somewhere beautiful for whatever time she has left, but I can't do that to her. She's so brave, Father. She believes she's going to get better. She makes plans for the future. How do I tell my 8-year-old daughter that I can't save her?" Daniel's hands were shaking. He pulled out his earbuds and sat there, staring at the simple wooden cross on the wall, his mind racing. $500,000. To him, that was nothing. Less than nothing. He'd spent more than that on his car collection. His company made more than that in an hour. It was a number on a spreadsheet, barely worth noting, but to Rosa it was everything. It was her daughter's life, and it might as well have been $1 billion for all she could reach it. The chaplain was saying something comforting, something about faith and miracles, but Daniel barely heard it. He waited until Rosa and the chaplain left, giving them time to go before he emerged from the back of the chapel. His heart was pounding like he'd run a marathon. He went straight to the business office on the 3rd floor. He knew the hospital administrator slightly, had met him at a few charity functions over the years. Within an hour, Daniel was in the man's office, and within 2 hours the arrangement was made. The payment would be anonymous. Completely untraceable. Daniel's lawyers would handle it through a series of trusts and foundations that would make it impossible to track back to him. The hospital would tell Rosa that a private donor had heard about Lily's case and wanted to help. That was all. No name, no face, no strings attached. "This is incredibly generous," the administrator said, shaking Daniel's hand. "You're saving that little girl's life." Daniel shook his head. "She already saved mine. I'm just returning the favor." The administrator looked confused, but Daniel didn't explain. He just asked that everything be handled quickly, that Rosa be told as soon as possible. He wanted Lily to start treatment before any more precious time was lost. That evening, Daniel visited Lily as usual. She was in better spirits than the day before, sitting up in bed and working on a puzzle. Rosa was there too, and Daniel could see the strain on her face, the dark circles under her eyes that seemed deeper every time he saw her. "Daniel," Lily called out when she saw him. "Come help me with this puzzle. It's really hard. It's supposed to be the Great Barrier Reef, but all the pieces look the same." Daniel sat down next to her bed and started sorting through puzzle pieces. Rosa smiled at him tiredly. "You don't have to keep coming by," she said softly. "I'm sure you have better things to do with your time." "There's nowhere I'd rather be," Daniel said honestly. Rosa's eyes filled with tears, and she quickly looked away. "I'm sorry. I'm just emotional today. It's been a hard week. Mom's worried about money stuff, Lily said matter-of-factly, not looking up from the puzzle. But I told her not to worry. Something good will happen. I can feel it. Daniel's throat felt tight. Sometimes good things do happen, he managed to say. He stayed for an hour, helping with the puzzle and listening to Lily talk about a documentary she'd watched about sea otters. When it was time for her medicine, he said his goodbyes and headed home. But he couldn't sleep that night. He kept thinking about Rosa's broken voice in the chapel, about Lily's certainty that something good would happen, about the choice he'd made. He'd given away money before. Lots of it. His company donated to charities. He'd funded scholarships and research grants. But it had always been abstract, formal. A check written at a gala, a tax deduction, a line item in the company's annual report. This was different. This was personal in a way that scared him. What if the treatment didn't work? What if, despite everything, Lily still died? Would he regret getting involved? Would it hurt more because he'd tried to help? But then he thought about Lily's smile. The way she'd patted his hand and told him she hoped he felt better. The ocean pictures she'd drawn for him. She'd given him those things expecting nothing in return. The least he could do was give something back. The next morning, Daniel got the call. The hospital administrator wanted him to know that Rosa had been informed. She'd broken down crying in the financial office, unable to believe it was real. The treatment would start within a week. Daniel went to the hospital that afternoon trying to act normal, like nothing had changed. But the moment he stepped onto the pediatric floor, he knew Rosa had been told. She was standing in the hallway with Dr. Patterson, and when she saw Daniel, she ran to him. "Did you hear?" she said, grabbing his hands. "Did they tell you? Someone paid for Lily's treatment. All of it, every single dollar. It's a miracle. An actual miracle." Daniel tried to look appropriately surprised. "That's amazing. I'm so happy for you. I don't even know who it was. They won't tell me. They just said it was a private donor who wanted to remain anonymous." Can you imagine? What kind of person does something like that? Rosa was laughing and crying at the same time. "I've been praying so hard, and I was starting to think God had forgotten about us. But he didn't. He sent us an angel." Daniel felt uncomfortable with the praise, even indirect. "You should go tell Lily. She'll be so excited." Rosa squeezed his hands one more time and then rushed off toward Lily's room. Daniel stayed in the hallway, leaning against the wall, his heart still racing. Dr. Patterson walked over, a knowing look in his eyes. "That was a kind thing you did." Daniel stiffened. "I don't know what you're talking about." "I'm on the board that reviews major donation cases," the doctor said quietly. "I had to sign off on the paperwork. Your secret's safe with me, but I wanted you to know what a difference you've made. We've seen amazing results with this treatment. Lily has a real shot now." "What are her actual odds?" Daniel asked, his voice low. "If the treatment works like it has in other cases, about 70% chance of full remission. But it's hard. Really hard. She'll be in pain. She'll be sick. She'll want to quit. But I've watched that little girl, and she's tougher than most adults I know." Daniel nodded, not trusting himself to speak. "One more thing," Dr. Patterson said. "Rosa doesn't know it's you, but Lily might figure it out. Kids are perceptive, especially smart ones like her. If she asks, you need to decide what you're going to say." That thought had been bothering Daniel too. He didn't want credit. He didn't want gratitude. He just wanted Lily to get better. But lying to her felt wrong too. "I'll handle it if it comes up," Daniel said finally. Later that day, he visited Lily. She was practically bouncing with excitement, as much as she could bounce while tethered to an IV. "Did you hear? Did you hear?" she said the moment he walked in. "Someone paid for my treatment. Mom says it's a miracle. We can do the special treatment that Dr. Patterson has been talking about. He says it's going to make me better. I'm going to get to see the ocean after all." Daniel sat down next to her bed, smiling despite the ache in his chest. "That's wonderful news. I'm so happy for you," Lily studied his face with those wise brown eyes. "You don't seem surprised." "I'm just really glad you're going to get the help you need," Daniel said carefully. "Mom says she doesn't know who paid for it. They won't tell her." Lily tilted her head. "Do you know who it was?" Daniel hesitated. He'd never been good at lying, and he especially couldn't lie to Lily. But he wasn't ready to tell her the whole truth either. "Does it matter who it was?" he asked instead. "Someone wanted to help. They were able to help. That's what's important." Lily nodded slowly. I guess you're right. Mom says when good things happen, we should just be grateful and not question it too much. She picked up her pencil and started drawing in her notebook. I'm going to draw a picture for whoever it was. A really special one. The best ocean picture I've ever made. Even if I never know who they are, they should have something beautiful to remember. Daniel watched her draw, this brave little girl who wanted to thank an anonymous stranger even while facing the fight of her life. He thought about all the years he'd spent chasing success, building his company, accumulating wealth. None of it had ever made him feel the way he felt in this moment, watching Lily carefully color in waves and fish and the bright, hopeful sun. Lily, he said quietly, yeah? Whatever happens with the treatment, whatever gets hard, I'm going to be here, okay? You're not going through this alone. Lily looked up from her drawing and smiled. I know, we're friends. Friends stick together. Yeah, Daniel said, his voice rough with emotion. Friends stick together. As he left the hospital that night, Daniel realized he'd crossed a line he couldn't uncross. He was invested now, not just financially, but emotionally. Lily's fight had become his fight. Her hope had become his hope. And for the first time since his mother's death, since his divorce, since all the lonely years of building an empire at the cost of everything else, Daniel felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. The treatment would start in 5 days. And whatever came next, Daniel would face it alongside the little girl who'd asked if she could sit with him and, in doing so, had changed everything. The first week of treatment was brutal. Daniel had thought he was prepared, had read all the literature the doctors provided, had steeled himself for what was coming. But nothing could have prepared him for watching Lily suffer. The experimental treatment was aggressive, designed to attack the cancer cells with everything modern medicine could throw at them. But it couldn't tell the difference between the bad cells and the good ones, and Lily's small body bore the brunt of that confusion. She was nauseous constantly, couldn't keep food down, lost the little bit of weight she had left to lose. The cheerful little girl who'd loved to talk about dolphins and draw ocean scenes became a pale, quiet shadow. Daniel came every day. Sometimes Lily was too sick to do more than acknowledge he was there with a small wave. Other times she'd manage to talk a little, though her voice was weak and her sentences short. Rosa was there around the clock, sleeping in a cot next to Lily's bed, barely eating, running herself into the ground. You should go home and rest, Daniel told Rosa one evening. Lily was sleeping fitfully and Rosa looked like she might collapse. I can't leave her, Rosa said automatically. Just for a few hours. Go home, take a shower, sleep in a real bed. I'll stay with her. I promise I'll call you if anything changes. Rosa looked torn, glancing between Daniel and her daughter. I'll take good care of her, Daniel said softly. You know I will. Finally, Rosa nodded. Just a few hours. And you'll call me the second anything happens, Daniel promised. After Rosa left, Daniel sat in the chair next to Lily's bed. The room was dim, lit only by the monitors and the small nightlight shaped like a turtle that Rosa had brought from home. Lily stirred, opening her eyes slowly. Mom, she whispered. She went home to rest for a bit. It's just me. Is that okay? Lily nodded, then winced. Even small movements seemed to hurt. Daniel, yeah? I don't like this. The treatment. It makes me feel really bad. Daniel's heart clenched. I know, sweetheart. I know it's awful. Dr. Patterson says it's working, though. He says the numbers are getting better. Lily's voice was so small, so tired, but it doesn't feel like getting better. It feels like getting worse. Daniel moved his chair closer, taking her small hand carefully. Sometimes things have to get worse before they get better. Like when you fall and scrape your knee and cleaning it out hurts more than the fall did. But you have to clean it so it can heal properly. This is a really big scrape, Lily said, and despite everything, there was a hint of her old humor in her voice. Yeah, it is, but you're doing amazing. You're the bravest person I know. Lily was quiet for a moment, then said, I'm scared sometimes. At night when Mom's asleep and the hospital is all quiet. I get really scared. What are you scared of? Daniel asked gently. That I won't get better. That I'll never see the ocean. That Mom will be sad forever. Lily's eyes filled with tears. I try to be brave for her, but it's hard. Daniel felt his own tears threatening. Being scared doesn't mean you're not brave. Brave means you keep going even when you're scared. And you're doing that. Every single day. Will you tell me about the ocean? Lily asked. I'm too tired to imagine it myself right now. So Daniel told her about the ocean. He talked about the beaches he'd been to, back when he traveled for pleasure instead of just for business. He described the way the waves sounded, the feel of sand between your toes, the taste of salt in the air. He told her about seeing dolphins playing in the surf once, about the way the sunset turned the water into liquid gold, about the shells he'd collected as a kid. Lily fell asleep somewhere in the middle of his description of a sea turtle he'd seen in Hawaii, her breathing evening out, her small hand still in his. Daniel sat there for a long time just watching her sleep and made a silent promise. If she got through this, when she got through this, he was going to make sure she saw the ocean, not in a picture or a video. The real thing. He'd take her himself if he had to. The weeks crawled by. Some days were better than others, but the treatment was relentless. Daniel watched Lily's hair fall out completely now. Not that it mattered under her collection of knitted caps. He watched her lose more weight until she looked like a strong breeze might blow her away. He watched her spirit flicker and fade and somehow impossibly reignite. And slowly, gradually, things began to shift. The blood work started showing improvement. The scans looked better. Dr. Patterson used cautious words like promising and encouraging. Rosa started to look less like she was drowning, and more like she could see the shore. Daniel found himself changing too. He'd started going to a therapist, something his ex-wife had begged him to do years ago. He was finally dealing with the loss of his mother, his failed marriage, the decades he'd spent building walls around his heart. The therapist helped him understand that he'd been so afraid of losing people that he'd never let himself truly have them in the first place. What changed? The therapist asked during one session. I met someone who showed me that love is worth the risk, Daniel said. Even if it hurts, even if you lose them, the love itself is worth it. He also started making changes at his company. He established a foundation to help families facing pediatric cancer, funding treatment costs that insurance wouldn't cover. He set up a program to match employee donations to medical causes. He even started leaving the office at reasonable hours, much to his business partner's shock. What's gotten into you? His partner asked one day. I'm just figuring out what actually matters, Daniel said. 3 months into treatment, Lily had a good day. A really good day. She was sitting up in bed, color in her cheeks, actually eating a sandwich and keeping it down. When Daniel arrived with his usual visit, she greeted him with something close to her old enthusiasm. Daniel, guess what? Dr. Patterson says if the next scan looks good, I might get to go home soon. Not forever, I'll still have to come back for more treatment, but I can go home for a little while. That's incredible, Daniel said, sitting down with a genuine smile. It felt like forever since he'd had a reason to really smile. What's the first thing you're going to do when you get home? Lily thought about it. Sleep in my own bed. And hug my stuffed animals. And maybe if I'm feeling okay, go outside and look at the sky. I miss the sky. Hospital windows don't show enough sky. Rosa came in then, carrying a bag from the cafeteria. She looked lighter somehow, less burdened. Did she tell you the good news? She did. I'm so happy for you both. I don't know how to thank you, Rosa said, and there was something in her eyes that made Daniel wonder if she suspected. You've been here through all of this. You barely know us, and you've been here more than some of our own family. You don't have to thank me, Daniel said. Lily's special. You're both special. Lily was drawing again, her hands steadier than they'd been in weeks. Daniel watched her create another ocean scene. This one with a little girl who looked healthier, stronger, standing at the water's edge with her arms raised in triumph. I've decided something, Lily said, not looking up from her drawing. When I'm all better, when I'm strong enough, I want to go to the ocean for real. Not in a wheelchair or with tubes or anything. I want to run into the water and splash around and maybe even learn to surf like I always said I would. I think that's a perfect plan, Daniel said. Will you come with me? Lily asked, looking up at him with those eyes that had seen too much pain for someone so young but somehow still held hope. You and Mom, we could all go together. Daniel felt his throat tighten. I would love nothing more. Over the next few months, Lily's progress continued. There were setbacks, days when the treatment hit her hard again, times when she was too sick to do more than lie in bed and watch the ceiling. But the trend line was upward. The cancer was retreating, responding to the aggressive treatment better than the doctors had dared to hope. Daniel was there through all of it. The good days and the bad days and the in-between days. He read to Lily when she was too weak to read herself. He played gentle games with her when she had the energy. He sat quietly when she needed silence and talked when she needed distraction. He brought Rosa coffee and insisted she take breaks. He learned the names of all the nurses and brought them thank you gifts. He became as much a fixture on the pediatric floor as the doctors themselves. And somewhere in the middle of all that, something unexpected happened. Daniel started to heal too. The grief over his mother's death, which had felt like a wound that would never close, began to scar over. Not forgotten, never forgotten, but integrated into who he was. He started sleeping better, started eating regular meals, started finding moments of joy again. One evening, about 5 months into Lily's treatment, Daniel was sitting with her and Rosa in Lily's room. It was one of the good days. Lily was alert, talkative, working on a particularly complex ocean scene that she said was going to be her masterpiece. "You know what I realized?" Lily said, carefully coloring in a school of fish. "This whole thing, being sick and everything, it's been really hard, but it also showed me who really cares. Some people I thought would be here weren't, but you were here, Daniel. You've been here the whole time, and of course I have," Daniel said. "That's what friends do." "But we're not just regular friends," Lily said, looking at him seriously. "You're like family now. Right, Mom?" Rosa, who was knitting yet another cap for Lily's growing collection, smiled. "Right. Family." Daniel felt something warm and overwhelming spread through his chest. Family. He'd been alone for so long, had convinced himself he was better off that way. But here in this hospital room with this brave little girl and her incredible mother, he'd found something he hadn't even known he was looking for. "Can I tell you something?" Lily said, setting down her colored pencil. "I think I know who paid for my treatment." Daniel's heart skipped. "What?" "I think it was you." Rosa looked up sharply from her knitting. "Lily, honey, what are you talking about?" "Think about it, Mom. Daniel's really rich. He owns a big company. And he showed up right when we needed help the most. And when I asked him if he knew who paid, he got all weird about it." Lily looked at Daniel with that too-wise expression. "It was you, wasn't it?" Daniel looked between Lily and Rosa, who was staring at him with wide eyes. He could lie. He could deny it. But he'd never been able to lie to Lily, and he wasn't about to start now. "Yeah," he said quietly. "It was me." Rosa's hands flew to her mouth. "Daniel, that was... You paid $500,000? "It was nothing," Daniel said, which was true for him but sounded absurd when said out loud. "Nothing?" Rosa's voice cracked. "It was everything. It was Lily's life. How can we ever... You don't owe me anything," Daniel said firmly. "Lily asked if she could sit with me on the worst day of my life, and she gave me a gift I couldn't ever repay. She reminded me what it means to be human, to care about someone, to have hope. So please don't thank me. I'm the one who should be thanking her." Lily smiled, looking satisfied. "I knew it. I told Mom I knew it." "Why didn't you tell us?" Rosa asked, tears streaming down her face. "Because I didn't do it for gratitude or recognition. I did it because I could, and because Lily deserves every chance at life." "Both of you do." Daniel looked at Rosa. "You're an amazing mother. The way you fought for her, the way you've never given up, it's incredible." "I just wanted to help." Rosa got up and hugged him, crying into his shoulder. "Thank you. Thank you. I don't have the words, but thank you." After Rosa composed herself and sat back down, Lily held out her hand to Daniel. He took it gently. "You saved my life," she said simply. "So now I have to make it count, right? I have to do something amazing with it." "You're already amazing," Daniel said. "Just being you is enough." "No," Lily said with the certainty only children have. "I'm going to grow up and help other kids who are sick. I'm going to be a doctor or a scientist and find cures. And I'm going to see the ocean and learn about marine life and protect the sea turtles. And I'm going to make you proud." "I'm already proud," Daniel said, his voice rough with emotion. "I'm proud every single day." As the evening wore on and Lily eventually fell asleep, Daniel sat with Rosa in the quiet of the hospital room. The monitors beeped steadily, a sound that had become as familiar as his own heartbeat. "She's going to make it," Rosa said softly. "I can feel it now." "She's going to beat this." "Yeah," Daniel agreed. "She is. She's too stubborn to let it win." And watching Lily sleep peacefully, color in her cheeks, hope in her future, Daniel knew that the scared, isolated man who'd sat in the cafeteria 6 months ago was gone. In his place was someone different, someone better. Someone who knew that the greatest success wasn't measured in dollars or business deals, but in moments like these. In love freely given, in second chances. In the simple question, "Can I sit here?" The answer, Daniel had learned, should always be yes.